Hello, I'm Dr. Q. Welcome to my channel. This video lecture covers unemployment and the unemployment rate. Do you know the unemployment rate now? Do you know the unemployment rate in 2010? Do you know the unemployment rate in 2020? Here's the unemployment rate provided by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is the raw data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics website. In 2009 to 2010, there was a great recession after the subprime crisis. The unemployment rate was persistently high for more than 3 years. It took the unemployment rate more than 6 years to decline back to the early 2008 level. During the COVID-19 pandemic, unemployment was at its historically high level, but it was shorter, and the unemployment rate went back down shortly after the vaccination rollout. And we can see that the unemployment rate was at a persistent low level from late 2021 to 2024. Why do we care about the unemployment rate? During recessions, tens of millions of people lost their jobs, generating huge traumas to individual families and societies. Loss of income, social interactions, and perceived self-worth. To society, loss of labor, which is the main factor of economic resources, could have been employed for economic development. So we want to decrease unemployment. But how? Before that, we need to figure out what types of people are included in the unemployment rate calculation. So, unemployment is bad. What do we do to cut the unemployment rate? The first step is to see its role in its overall population. If we can call those people with jobs employed, can we call those without jobs unemployed? What about babies, retired people, soldiers, students attending school full-time, and housewives who choose not to work? Let's use the data of September 2024 to illustrate the calculation of the civilian unemployment rate. The population numbers are measured in thousands of people. The population was about 342 million. Then we segment the population into 3 slices. The first slice refers to the people who cannot work in the civilian sector. Such as people who are under 16 years old, like children, and the institutionalized ones, like people in hospitals for extended amounts of time, in prisons. As we calculate the civilian unemployment rate, we exclude non-civilians such as military people. The rest of the population is called the civilian non-institutional population 16 years old and over, within which we have the second slice of people. The ones who can work but are not looking for jobs, such as stay-at-home parents, full-time students, and retired people. The last slice is the civilian labor force, which refers to those who are able and willing to work. The civilian labor force accounts for less than half of the population. Within the civilian labor force, 161,699,000 people are employed, with full-time or part-time paid jobs. The remaining 6,049,000 people do not have a paid job. They have been actively searching for jobs for the past 4 weeks. If they're offered a job they're looking for, they're available to work. Those people are unemployed. Now, let's look at the calculation of the civilian unemployment rate. The numerator is the unemployed population. The denominator is the civilian labor force. Plug the numbers in. The unemployed are 6,049. And the labor force is 167,718. The unemployment rate for September 2024 was about 3.6%. This is consistent with the BLS report. Let's do some practice. Pause and come back. All right. The first step is to write down the formula for calculating the unemployment rate. We know the unemployed population is 7. We don't see the labor force, which is the sum of the employed and unemployed, 102. Then we plug the numbers into the formula and figure out the unemployment rate is about 6.9%. Did you get the correct answer? Obviously, the calculation of unemployment received criticism for underestimating. It makes the qualification for being unemployed so stringent. Those who have part-time paid jobs are grouped as employed. Some take part-time jobs as a personal choice, but some want a full-time job but cannot land one. Another group is not actively looking for jobs because they have been looking for jobs for a long time, but still cannot get one. They're upset and discouraged and eventually drop out of actively searching. Those people are not even counted in the labor force and surely not counted as unemployed. In fact, BLS offers different measurements of the unemployment rate from U1 to U6. U1 is the most stringent for being unemployed, quoting persons unemployed 15 weeks or longer as a percent of the civilian labor force. So U1 is the lowest. U6 is the least stringent and highest, but they all follow a similar pattern. Now we know the definition of the civilian unemployment rate and that unemployment is not good for society or the economy. We want to figure out ways to lower unemployment and help people to find jobs. Well, for some types of unemployment, there's not much the economists can do about it. For some unemployment, we do have policy suggestions to help. So, let's look at the different reasons for different types of unemployment. The first one is frictional unemployment. It refers to people moving between jobs or looking for their first job. Because of asymmetric information, finding and landing a job takes time. A typical job hunting process will be like this. A job candidate searches online or local news about matching jobs, then prepares the resume accordingly, goes through the application process, and waits for response. It may take rounds and rounds of interviews to get feedback, go through the negotiation process, and start the job. If any process step does not go well, the candidate has to look for new opportunities. There might be some jobs that perfectly match the candidate, but he or she is not aware of them. It takes time for the employer to collect adequate information to find the right candidate and for the candidate to find a dream job. Imperfect information is associated with frictional unemployment. What we can do is to promote awareness of the related information. The second type of unemployment is structural unemployment. It refers to a situation where the obsolete skills of workers cannot match available jobs, or the workers and the jobs cannot co-locate. This photo was taken in 2015 in one of the largest steel factories in China. It shows nobody working on the production line. Actually, about a dozen workers are operating on computers in an air-conditioned room. But not long ago, it still demanded many workers working in the unpleasant environment down there next to the production lines. Well, those people lost their jobs due to the technology advancement. It's not a new story that machines take people's job. During the Industrial Revolution, the British textile workers burned down factories and smashed newly invented machines that took their jobs. And those old jobs, like ice cutters' jobs, were taken by refrigerators. In the old days, if you want to call someone, you needed to be connected by the switchboard operators. Their jobs were long gone. Brick and mortar travel agents lost their jobs to online search engines. Traditional energy workers are in a sunset industry as climate change becomes more severe and the emissions from fossil fuels are a bigger concern. New and clean energy sectors are replacing the traditional ones. North Carolina used to be the textile state, but then textile workers lost their jobs because the factories moved overseas for cheaper labor and less tax. A timely example is that artificial intelligence, AI, is claimed to take jobs from people. Writers who worked for Hollywood studios went on strike. What can we do about structural unemployment? Structural unemployment is unavoidable because of technological advancement and globalization. Technology improvement and globalization are great as they make the production process safer and cheaper and allow us to enjoy better quality products or services in a less costly way. The government should establish a system to provide retraining and re-education opportunities to equip workers with the latest skills and knowledge for jobs and promote awareness of the dynamic job market to reduce prolonged structural unemployment. An example would be the GI Bill. The GI Bill was a law that provided a range of benefits for some returning World War II veterans. GI Bill is still used to refer to programs created to assist American military veterans. Many veterans benefit from the GI Bill by receiving education and training to return to everyday life. The difference between frictional and structural unemployment is that frictional unemployed workers have skills that available jobs desire. Still, the matching takes time and sometimes fails, while structurally unemployed workers do not have the desired skills or cannot relocate for the jobs. It is not up to the economic policy to lower these two types of unemployment. They're naturally there and will always be there. They're unavoidable and demand the government support mentioned above to help. Therefore, the sum of the frictional and structural unemployment rate is also called the natural rate of unemployment, or NRU. In economics, we say the economy is fully employed if there is only a natural rate of unemployment. At the natural rate of unemployment, the GDP is at its full potential or potential GDP. Economists' main concern is cyclical unemployment, which is associated with insufficient aggregate demand or an economic recession. From this historical unemployment rate graph, we can tell that every elevated unemployment rate, which is mainly contributed by the high cyclical unemployment rate, corresponds to an economic recession. We already know that ideally there is only frictional and structural unemployment, or there is only a natural rate of unemployment. If the actual rate of unemployment ARU is larger than the natural rate of unemployment NRU, it means that the economy produces underproduction possibilities given our resources and the level of technology. You might liken this to operating inside of the production possibility curve if you as you covered in the production possibilities model. On the production possibility frontier model, it means that the economy is not producing at its full potential by exhausting all economic resources. It produces at a level that can improve. There is a gap between actual GDP and potential GDP. It is called the GDP gap. It means the loss of output that could have been produced if we didn't have cyclical unemployment. It's a measure of how efficiently an economy is using its resources. The GDP gap can be negative when the actual GDP is smaller than the potential GDP, meaning the economy is underperforming and has spare capacity. This happens after an economic crisis, recession, or negative shock. The GDP gap is positive when the actual GDP is larger than the potential GDP. Meaning the economy exceeds its full potential and the resources are fully or overutilized. A positive GDP gap can indicate that an economy is overheated and at risk of inflation. It can also be a sign of excess demand. Economist Arthur Ocon quantified the relationship between unemployment and GDP as follows. For every 1% of unemployment above the natural rate, a negative GDP gap of about 2% occurs. This is known as Ocon law. This means that the country is producing below what could potentially be produced given current economic resources and technology level. This graph shows the actual and potential real GDP and the unemployment level. The red line is the potential real GDP. When the actual GDP, the blue line, is on top of the real GDP, the GDP gap is positive. The unemployment level is low. The economy is overheated. the price level or inflation can be high, and aggregate demand is high. When the actual GDP is lower than the potential GDP, the gap is negative. The unemployment level is high. The economy is in crisis or recession, the aggregate demand is low, and the inflation rate is generally low. We already discussed the non-economic costs listed here at the beginning of the session. While it is costly to all unemployed people, the burden across demographics can differ. The burden varies across occupation, age, race, ethnicity, gender, education level, and the duration of being unemployed. Here is a comparison before and during the Great Recession in 2009. Rates are lower for white-collar workers. Teenagers have the highest unemployment rates. African Americans have higher unemployment rates than whites. Rates for male and females are comparable, though females have a lower unemployment rate. Less educated workers, on average, have higher unemployment rates than workers with more education. The long-term 15 weeks or more unemployment rate is much lower than the overall rate, although it increased from 1.5% in 2007 to 4.7% in the 2009 recession. The Bureau of Labor Statistics provides a more recent report. The global perspective shows the unemployment rates in 5 industrialized nations from 1990 to 2023. Compared with Italy, France, and Germany, the United States had a relatively low unemployment rates before the Great Recession. Afterward, the unemployment rate of Italy and France remained high, while Germany dropped below the United States. In high unemployment European countries, firing or laying off workers is very costly. Therefore, firms and businesses are reluctant to hire, partially contributing to the high unemployment rate. The Japanese government is determined to keep the unemployment rate very low level. All right, this is all for the unemployment. See you in the next one.